I'm your host, Jeff Sart. We're going to take you behind the scenes with the craft distillers who are pouring their heart and soul into crafting the next version of America's spirit. This is the Great American Whiskey Cookers. You've probably heard of Harvard, but are you thinking of Illinois when you hear Harvard? Well, we found a distillery in Harvard, Illinois that squarely has its roots embedded in its location. Rush Creek Distillery. From generational farmers to a Class A trout stream, this distillery in the Midwest knows who they are, what they are about, and they never take themselves too serious. You don't want to miss this. Welcome to this edition of the Great American Whiskey Cookers. I'm Jeff, and I'm sitting here in Harvard, Illinois. Not the Harvard that you normally think of. I'm in Harvard, Illinois, and I'm at Rush Creek Distilling. And so, I mean, we're sitting here in the tasting room, and it looks like a full bar. Is it a full bar? So cocktails, beer?
No beer.
No beer. It's all spirits.
Yep.
And are they all spirits that you guys make?
They are.
So you don't bring in any other spirit?
There's one whiskey that we still have. That's a source whiskey. That was one of the originals that we bought it when I was 8 years old. We did our final harvesting of those barrels earlier this year, I believe. And we released it was our trophy whiskey that we released at 15 year. Technically whiskey from bourbon mash. It's absolutely awesome, and it's gonna be sad when it's gone, but it's kind of really nice to see our whiskeys coming to maturity at that 6-7 year age kind of thing. And with more stuff behind it, that's the fun part. We're gonna do something over the next, we actually started it. We'll barrel it in January, and then in 2 or 3 years, we'll have a good sense of what it's going to taste like. And so that's the fun, hard part. But it's like watching paint dry, but in super slow motion.
So I've got a couple of questions. Let's talk about the trophy whiskey first. You're going to sunset that. You just harvested the last of the barrels, yes. Right? And you're upfront about the fact that you guys sourced that.
Yep.
You haven't tried to hide it at all, right? So is there any plan to do any more sourcing, or are you done with the sourcing?
I think we're probably done, but if something comes along that is weird, outrageous, and great,
you'll take it.
We'll buy a couple barrels and put it in the store.
Sure. So once this trophy whiskey is done and gone, it's gone.
Yes.
Yeah, for all intent purposes, right? So if you have fans out there of the trophy whiskey, or if somebody wants to try it, and it's how old? 15 years old. That's a pretty good age. Really, they really need to kind of stop in and try it.
They got to hustle up.
Yeah, they got to hustle up, right? So let's get to the other question I had was, you mentioned, Todd, that your stuff is this 5, 6, 7 years old. Is there a general age or a minimum age that you're always going for?
Love this question. We just had this conversation.
Oh, is this Jeff's
question?
Well, it's a conversation that we continually have, yes. Because, as things mature, you think, 6 years is a sweet spot, but then you get a barrel to 7 years. Is there a difference? Is it better?
And so I think we can only have that conversation in a, we haven't tried 7-year stuff yet. We will early next year. But we have one of them, and it's better than the 6. So that's an impossible question to answer. When does it hit? And so I look at it, and it's a curve. And I'm a recovering engineer, so everything gets put on a graph of some sort. But if you look at it and you put a graph together, and it's time, and it's how's it taste, it goes like this, right? And so eventually it gets to that point where it's flattening off, and then you have to draw a curve in there on loss. And then you look at that and go, okay, this is where we need to be. It might get a little better in 2 years, but it's only a little better, not compared to 2 versus 4 years.
Right.
8 versus 10 years is going to be way different than 2 versus 4.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that we talk to ourselves when we ask questions about, and it's a philosophical conversation at this point because we really don't know.
So you're still figuring that part out.
Absolutely.
And so double oak, we just went through this exercise with double oak. What was it, 3 years, 8 months, and 2 years, 2 months or something. And so we just harvested what we needed for the store. It's not in distribution yet.
It should be.
Then we tasted.
Telling you right now, that's what I'm drinking. Is I'm drinking a double oak.
So then we tasted something that was 2.5 years, and we're like, oh my God, we really liked the version before, but this is so much better.
Yeah.
So instead of harvesting at that time, which
said-
we thought we would, we're going to put it off for another 6 months, and now it's going to be in May-ish, a little earlier than May of next year that we'll harvest that, and that will be what, at least at this point, that is the intention of what we'll be releasing to distribution at this point.
And that's one of the really neat things I like about craft distillers. You guys can make those really quick pivots, right?
That take a couple years.
Yeah. Right. Whereas
Really quick.
yeah, really quick. But you guys can make that decision and just move with it versus big bourbon that has a selling profile and they're kind of stuck within that and they have to come out with a whole different expression and you guys can make those changes fairly quick.
Yep.
Which is kind of nice. So how many expressions do you guys have altogether?
Do you define expression? Is that just a mash bill?
Sure.
Okay. So we're gonna go the clears. We're not even gonna talk about those, but there's two, vodka and gin, right? And so the gin is just vodka, so that's really only one.
Right.
But as far as whiskey mash bills, we now have 6.
Did you count the
7. Sorry.
Would you count the four grade?
Yes, I counted that one. So it's 7 now. So 7 independent mash bills that we treat differently, and there are some finishing. Yeah, I know he does it all day. The finishing might be a little bit different. For example, we have our bourbon whiskey with the rye kicker. That same whiskey turns into the double oak, but if you taste them next to each other, they're significantly different. And it surprises me when people say, well, I like the regular one better. I think they're wrong, but I get it. I can't tell them they're wrong. I do all the time, knowing full well that that's not reasonable. And so we also use that we'll use the wheated whiskey for some of our barrel finished honey or maple syrup. And so there's things that, and there's new ones. The wheat whiskey, we call our 51 wheat whiskey. We've only tasted twice. I think it was after 3 years and 3 or 4 years. That'll be coming out probably next year as a 5-year after we taste it, and we'll change our mind 3 more times. New mash bill that's our 90 corn whiskey, which is 90% corn, 10% malted barley in a used bourbon barrel. That was another whiskey that we had sourced when we first started. We made a conscious decision not to replace that until we could harvest our own bourbon barrels so that we can control what they were going into.
Good.
And see, that's money.
That's still 2 years out. So we started that about 3 years ago. And then a new mash bill that we just started last week, which is a 4-grain sour mash, which is our first sour mash attempt. And through some really good experiments and some half-assed math and a little bit of dumb luck, it's working out the way we kind of expected it to be.
Guys, thanks for this discussion. I'm looking forward to the rest of the day.
Cheers.
Cheers to you. And
Got Jamal's.
exactly. Look up Rush Creek and watch for more videos. We have a whole bunch more coming out of Rush Creek. Like us on the socials. Until next time, if you can't be good at it. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
But there's 2, vodka and gin, right? So the gin is vodka, so that's really only one. Right. But as far as whiskey mash goes, we now have 6. 7. Sorry.
Did you count the four grade?
Yes, I counted.